Hey guys, welcome to my 2024 React Crash Course. So this is something I do every 2 to 3 years, not just with React, but all the big frameworks, just to kind of keep up to date. So this course is designed to get you up and running with React as quickly as possible, and this is geared toward beginners. So if you've never used React before, you're in the right place. And we're going to build a front end for a job listing website, and you'll be introduced to concepts like components, props, state, hooks, data fetching, and much more. And we'll also be using the React router to create a multi-page application. Also, in the real world, you're going to be working with backend data and APIs, so we're going to use the JSON server library to create a mock REST API as our backend. Now, one thing I want to mention real quick is that React 19 is right around the corner, and it does add some new features. Many of those features are under the hood, meaning that the core concepts of React when it comes to writing the code and the fundamentals, those aren't going to change as far as what we're doing here. So the biggest change to React 19 is that they're adding a compiler which will convert React code into regular JavaScript, potentially doubling performance. So it'll work in a similar way to frameworks like Svelte. Now, we're going to be using version 18 in this video as 19 isn't released yet, but all the core concepts that we're going to talk about are the same, so it doesn't matter if you're using 18 or 19. And I did do a video on React 19 a couple weeks ago, and we used the experimental version of React to test out some of the new features. So that might be something that you want to watch after this if you're interested. All right, so we're going to take a look at some slides, and then we'll get right into learning React. Okay, so like I said, we're going to spend a little bit of time with some slides just to kind of give you an overview of what React is and what it entails. And I'm going to warn you that it may be overwhelming if this is your first introduction to the library. And that's why I like to be more hands-on and jump right in, but it can be helpful to have an overview just so you understand what React actually is and some of the terms that we'll be using. So what is React? It's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces, and it allows us to build user interfaces and front ends of websites and applications using components, which I'll talk about soon. And it was created and maintained by Facebook and a community of individual developers and companies. You probably have heard React referred to as a framework. I refer to it as a framework all the time, but it's actually a UI library to be specific. And the difference is that a framework is a complete solution. So Angular, for instance, is a full-featured framework because it includes a router, an HTTP client, a state management library, and much more. And the reason that React is often referred to as a framework is because it operates like one, and it's in direct competition with frameworks like Angular. And in fact, it's actually the most popular out of the major front-end frameworks, which are React, Vue.js, Angular, and Svelte. And it's often used with other libraries, such as React Router, to create a full-featured solution. And also the ecosystem of React is huge, so it can be used for a wide variety of applications, such as single-page apps, server-side rendered applications, and static websites, which I'll talk more about those in a few minutes as well. All right, so why React? Now, back in the day, the web was very static. You would click on a link and it would take you to another page. The entire page would refresh. This was the state of the web for a long time. Then came along Ajax, and this allowed us to make requests to the server and get data without having to refresh the page. And this was kind of a game changer in terms of the user interfaces. So it allowed us to build single-page applications where we can have a very dynamic user experience. But as this type of application and interface grows, it can become very hard to maintain. And this is where React and front-end frameworks come in. We can build dynamic UIs in a way that's easy to maintain and scale. And if you've ever tried to build a large-scale UI with vanilla JavaScript, you know that it's quite a task, and the code gets very unorganized and messy unless you build your own framework or something like that. So React and these other frameworks make this much easier. Now, traditionally, just to talk about how it works kind of under the hood, React used something called a virtual DOM. The DOM meaning the document object model, which you should be familiar with. If you're not, I would definitely recommend learning more vanilla JavaScript first. But the virtual DOM is a lightweight copy of the actual DOM, and when the state of a component changes, the virtual DOM changes first, and then React will compare the two, the virtual DOM and the actual DOM, and it will update the parts that need to be updated. So this is traditionally how React works. That's how version 18 works that we're using now, and every version before it. However, with the upcoming version 19, React will have a compiler that, to my understanding, will replace the virtual DOM, and it'll make things faster, and it will also automate some of the tedious tasks, making React easier to work with overall. Now, most of the reasons to use React also apply to the other front-end frameworks as well, and if you ask me specifically why React over the other ones, I would probably say jobs. There's definitely a lot more React jobs than the others. Also, the ecosystem is huge when it comes to meta SSR frameworks like Next.js and Remix. You have React Native for mobile development. It's definitely the most popular. Now, I'm going to be 100% transparent with you guys. The reason that I use React and the reason that I do most of my courses and videos on React is because of its popularity. To me, Vue.js and Svelte do a lot of things in a much more straightforward way. So if you're not caring about jobs, maybe you're a freelancer or maybe you're just trying to build your own products, I would definitely look into other frameworks as well, especially Svelte and Vue, because again, I think React just overcomplicates a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong, it's a great framework, but if we're just looking strictly at how we write our code using these frameworks, I think that Svelte and Vue are easier. With that said, that is just my opinion, so take that with a grain of salt. Also, these frameworks basically do the same thing, and once you learn one, if you learn React now and then you want to jump to Vue, it's going to be easy. It's just syntax that changes. The core of what you're actually doing is the same. You're still writing components, you're still passing props, you're still managing state. It's just different syntax. All right, so speaking of components, components are the core concept of not just React, but any front-end framework. And a component is a reusable piece of code that can be used to build elements on a page. Components can kind of be thought of as custom HTML elements. And components can be broken down into smaller ones. This is called composition. And this is a great way to build UIs because it allows you to break down complex interfaces into smaller, more manageable pieces. And this makes your code easier to maintain and scale. And components can be either classes or functions. However, classes are kind of the older way of doing things in React. Nowadays, you're not really going to see class-based components. They're all functional. We will be using functional components in this course and in any other course I do. Components can also take in props, which are basically like arguments or attributes, and they can also hold their own state or their own data. Now, state is another thing that you're going to have to wrap your head around when working in the front end. State represents the data that a component manages internally. It allows components to store and manage their own data, which can change over time, and it'll change in response to user interactions or other factors. Now, state is typically used for data that's expected to change, such as user input, fetch data from APIs, or UI-related data, like whether a modal is open or closed. And to define state in a functional component, you can use a hook, and I'll talk more about hooks in a second. You'll use the useState hook, which is a built-in React hook, and this will return an array with two elements, the current state value and the function to update that state. And we're going to get into this. I know that just hearing me say this doesn't tell you much. We will get into examples. Now, there's also something called global state, which relates to the app as a whole and not just a single component. So this would be something like the data that you fetch from your database. You probably want to share that with multiple components. So there's ways to handle this, everything from just keeping your global state in your main component and passing it down to child components, to the React Context API, which is beyond the scope of this tutorial, but it is an option within React. You can also use a third-party state management system like Redux. Okay, now we're not going to get into context or Redux, but we will look at some global state later on. Now, if you've never used React before, hooks can be really intimidating. They're also difficult to explain, so bear with me. Once we start using them, it'll be more clear. Now, React hooks are functions that enable functional components to use state and other React features without writing a class. Because like I said, React components used to be classes, and they used to have something called lifecycle methods, which were methods that ran at specific times during the component rendering process. And functional components don't have lifecycle methods because they're not a class, so hooks allow us to do the same stuff that we could do within class components, such as set state, such as perform effects like data fetching on load, things like that. And basically right now at this point in your learning, the two main hooks that you need to know are useState and useEffect. The others aren't really essential for you to know, at least right now. In fact, 3 of them are being phased out in React 19. As you can see, all hooks start with the word use, so you can also create your own custom hooks to use within your components, and that's not something you need to know right now, but just know that you can create a hook that basically does anything. All right, so I just want to give you a full picture of what a component looks like. So we know that it can have state associated with it, which is just data, and it can also take in props. Now, the other part of a component is the output, and the output is JSX, or JavaScript Syntax Extension. And this is basically HTML or an HTML-like syntax within your JavaScript, and that's what is actually returned from a React component. So this is actually an example right here. You can see there's it's a function called hero. It's taking in some props, a title and subtitle with a default, and then it's returning what looks like HTML, but this is actually JSX. Okay, what's great about JSX is that it's dynamic. It's basically what HTML would be if it were a programming language. You can see right here we're outputting title and subtitle, which are coming from these props. All right, you can also have expressions, you can have loops, conditionals, you can basically do anything within your JSX. All right, so there are some differences when it comes to HTML. As you can see, you can't use class because that's a reserved word in JavaScript, so instead we use class name. Also for, if you, let's say you have a label with a for attribute, that's going to be changed to HTML for. So there are some slight differences, but for the most part, it's just HTML. All right, now I was a little hesitant to even add this page because I think it might confuse some people. So if you don't understand it, that's fine. Don't worry about it at the moment. So there's different types of applications and websites you can build using React. So what we're going to be doing today is a SPA, or a single page application. And this is what these frameworks were initially created for. So basically it loads a single HTML file, an index.html in the browser, and then it loads a JavaScript bundle that includes your entire UI, your entire application basically. And this allows our interface to be very interactive. And even if you go to a specific page, like let's say you click on a link and go to /about, it's not actually loading the about page on the server. The JavaScript is loading that content for you. So SPAs are, like I said, great for really fast, dynamic interfaces, but it can have some issues when it comes to initial page load times as well as SEO, since the content comes from JavaScript. So the solution for that is to create a server-side rendered app, which you can do with a framework like Next.js or Remix. Now, these frameworks still use React. You can kind of think of it as a wrapper around React. And instead of everything being bundled in the JavaScript, the initial page load is rendered on the server. So this is good for SEO. It's also good for the initial page load time. Now, an SSR, or server-side rendered app, is a little more difficult to deploy because you do need a server. A single page app you can pretty much deploy to any type of host. SSRs, you use something like Vercel or Netlify or something like that. Now, the third option is static site generation. So a static site is where the server generates a bunch of HTML files at build time. So we have frameworks like Gatsby and Astro that can do this. And those frameworks also use React. So I know that this can get complicated because there's just so many damn frameworks, but just know that they're all using React. So what you learned today still applies whether you're using Gatsby, whether you're using Next.js, Astro, you can actually use React or Vue or Svelte components. But yeah, what you're learning today is basically the core of all this other stuff. So don't worry about learning this other stuff right now. Just know that it is available. And just know that if you're confused, that's completely normal. You should be. It's JavaScript. You're always going to be confused. And I just realized that this says React generate static HTML. That's not really accurate. It would be the meta framework like Gatsby that is generating it, not React itself. Now, there's a few ways to get started with React. We're going to be using a tool called Vite along with the React plugin, and getting set up is as easy as running this npm command. Now, Create React App was the most popular option to build a spa with React, and it's been around for a long time, but it's no longer recommended. It's a bit bloated, it's slower, and as far as I know, it's not supported anymore. So Vite is a newer solution that's faster, it has a better developer experience. It's built on top of something called ESBuild, which is a very fast JavaScript bundler, and it also has a built-in development server with hot module replacement. So it's a great solution for building spas with React and other frameworks as well. So that's it. Let's jump in and let's get our hands dirty learning React. All right, guys, so real quick, I just want to explain how my crash courses go if you're new to them. So basically, the point of this is to teach you how to get up and running with React in this case. And we want to go over all the fundamentals, but I also want to create a project and end up with something that you can have that you built by the end of it. So this is what we're going to create, this React Jobs website, and it's just a job listings front end. Now, as far as the data itself, it's going to be coming from a mock backend that we're going to create with JSON server. It's really simple. Basically, we just create a JSON file with some data, and we can then send get requests, put, post, delete, and we're going to add CRUD functionality. All right, so as far as the template here, the design, this is a Tailwind theme that I created, and in the repository, you'll have your source folder with all your components and React stuff, and then this theme files, _theme files, is going to be just the HTML files, basically just a theme. It's not going to actually fetch data or anything like that. It'll all be hard-coded, but it'll have all the classes and all the stuff that we need for styling, so we'll be copying some of that as we go along, because I like it to look decent. Now, just to quickly go over this, the home page, we have a hero component, Navbar component, some boxes, and then we're going to fetch our jobs and list 3 of them on the home page. We can toggle the description here just to give you, an example of state, component state. And then if you click read more, it'll take you to the page, the details page with all the info, the company info. There's buttons to edit and delete the jobs. Now, we're not going to get into authentication. That's something that would be separate from this crash course. I do have videos with all different types of authentication in React, but we'll have full CRUD functionality. We have our add page here to add a job. We have our jobs page, which will show all the jobs, again, having this little toggle here. So it's a pretty simple project, but I think that it's a good one to just kind of break you into React and how everything works as far as components, props, events, things like that. All right, so yeah, that's what we'll be building. The repository link will be in the description. And as far as what you need, you're just going to have Node.js installed because we're using Vite and we're using the Node package manager to set that up. So NPM comes with Node.js, so just download that if you don't already have it. I would suggest installing the React developer tools in your browser. We'll probably use those at some point. You can see the components through your browser and see any props and state and things like that. So it's helpful. And then react.dev is the new React website, and this is where you can find all the documentation. So you might want to just use that kind of as a supplement to the crash course. All right, so we can close this stuff up here. I'm just going to keep the React Dev website open. And I do have in Sublime Text, I have the theme files. So if I need to copy something from here, to get the HTML and the classes, we'll go ahead and just grab that. So maybe just open the theme files up somewhere. All right, so we're going to start off by opening the terminal and just go to wherever you want to create your project folder. I have a folder called dev that I'm going to use, and then we're going to run npm create. Again, make sure you have Node.js installed or npm won't work. So we're going to say create Vite at latest, and then just whatever you want to call the folder. I'm going to call it React Crash 2024, but you might want to call it like React Jobs or something like that. I'm just naming it this for you guys, for the repo. And then, as you can see, you can use vanilla JavaScript, Vue, React, and other frameworks. We're going to go ahead and choose React, and you can choose to use TypeScript if you want. I'm going to go with just regular JavaScript, and that's it. That creates basically a boilerplate app for us. So we can CD into that folder that we just created. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code with code dot. And if you're using something else, that's fine. Just open the folder in your text editor or IDE. So let's just take a look at the file structure real quick. So there's a Vite config file, and this is for any configurations for your dev server. As you can see, we're bringing in the React plugin and using it here, passing it into this array. That's because we chose React when we were asked the questions. One thing I like to do is change the port, because by default, I believe it's 5173. I prefer to use 3000 for front-end stuff, so what we can do is add in a server object, and then in that server object, we can say port, and then whatever you want. So I'm going to use 3000. So now, if I'm going to open up my terminal within VS Code, my integrated terminal, and run, first of all, npm install, because as you can see, there's no node modules folder. So we need to install the dependencies, which are React DOM, and Vite, and then we have some plugins for ESLint, as well as some types for TypeScript. All right, so once we do that, as you can see in the package.json, there's a dev script, so we can run npm run dev, and for me, it's going to open on 3000 because I changed that value in the config. So let's open that up, and you should see a page like this, just a landing page. All right, so now we have the dev server running. Let's just talk about the structure here for a minute. So the index.html, remember, this is a single page application, and this file is the single page because this loads in the browser, and then everything else loads through JavaScript. And as you can see here, we're actually including the main.jsx file in the source folder, including that as a module, which is really cool. It's different than how, Create React app works with Webpack. So here, I'm just going to change the title to React Jobs, and that should change as soon as I save it. You can see up here. And then the way that this works, if you're not familiar with front-end frameworks, they all pretty much do this same type of thing. We have a div, or I should say single-page applications do the same thing. There's a div, and it has an ID of root. If we go into the source folder, this is our React application, and the entry point is this main.jsx file. And in here, we're bringing in React DOM, which is the library that allows it to work with the document object model or the browser. And then on that React DOM object, we have a create root, and that gets passed in an element. And as you can see, we're selecting that root element by ID. And then we're calling this render method, and you can render whatever you want as your application. And in this case, we have this app component, which comes from this app.jsx file. Now, I could change this to anything I want. If I put an H1 here and say hello, and I save that, as you can see, that's what's rendering as my application. And it's styled because of this index.css. So I want to just clean this up a bit. I'm just going to undo that and put the app back. And then you also have this strict mode, which is a wrapper component that'll check for potential problems in your app. So it'll check for things like deprecated and unsafe lifecycle methods, legacy context API usage, things like that. So what I want to do is a little bit of cleanup. So as far as the CSS, you can see it comes with two CSS files, index.css and app.css. We're going to be using Tailwind, so we need to install that and set it up. I'm just going to keep the index CSS. So let's delete the app CSS. And the app.jsx is our main component. And basically, this is all the stuff you see right now on the home page. So what I'm going to do is completely wipe that away and just create basically an empty component. Now, components, they're functions, and you can do a regular function. So for instance, we could do function app, or you can do an arrow function, so const app, and then use an arrow. And you can type it out if you want, but I would suggest using this extension here. This it's called ES7 React Redux React Native Snippets. And this gives you easy snippets that you can use to generate components. So what I like to do is RAFCE, which is React Arrow Function Component, and then export, which will be at the bottom. So you see if I hit tab or enter, it gives me an arrow function and has the export at the bottom. Now there's other snippets like if we do RAFC, it does do an arrow function, that's what the A is, but the export is here as opposed to the bottom. And then for the regular function, I believe is RFC. So now you can see it's using the regular function syntax. So you can use any of these, but I'll be doing RAFCE. So if I save that now, we should just see app. Now I want to get rid of all the CSS. And as you can see in the main.jsx, it is including the CSS file, and I'm going to keep that, but let's just get rid of everything in that file for now. Okay, so now we just have just an unstyled website. So yeah, that's pretty much how this works. We have this div with the ID of root, and then we're inserting our app into that using this render method. All right, now let's get Tailwind set up. And there's some steps we can follow. If you just Google, let's say Vite React Tailwind. So right here, install Tailwind CSS with Vite. So basically we need to install, let's see, we already did this, created a Vite project. So now we just need to install Tailwind, Post CSS, and Auto Prefixer. So I'm just going to grab that, and then I'm going to open up a new console. I'm going to just let that one run the server, and we'll go ahead and run that. And then we want to initialize Tailwind with -p. So this will create a Tailwind config file, and the -p will create a Post CSS config file. So let's go ahead and run that. And now you can see tailwind.config, postcss.config. Then the Tailwind config, we want to have this. So I'm just going to copy that whole thing, go to Tailwind config, and just paste that in. All right, so basically it's going to watch anything that has a JS, TS, JSX, or TSS extension. It's going to look for Tailwind classes in any of those files in the source folder. Now, there is a couple things I want to add here. So in extend, I'm going to say font family, and I want to use the Roboto font. So I'm going to say sans, and then in an array, we can pass in Roboto or whatever font you want to use, and then sans serif. So it just allows you to pass in a font stack. And then also I want to have a certain grid class for the details page that's 70-30. Basically, the left column will be 70, the right will be 30. So I'm going to say grid template columns, and then we're going to just pass in here a string and say 70-30. So that'll be the class. And then we want here 70% space and then 28%. We'll leave a little bit of room there. Okay, so that's going to allow us to add a class later on that we need. Now my spell check is showing these blue squiggly lines, so I'm just going to disable that extension just to get rid of those, because that could be a little confusing. Okay, so that's the Tailwind config. Now we just need to go to our index CSS and add these 3 lines, which is going to load Tailwind. So right here, index CSS, add those, save it, and then we should be all set. So if we go back to our application, should, let's see, we might have to reload. Let's just stop the server and run it again. utility classes were detected. Oh, we don't have any Tailwind classes, but that's the only reason it's saying this. But you can see the font has changed and there's no margin or padding, so Tailwind is being included. In fact, we can go to our app component, and remember with JSX, we can't use class, we use class name. So let's say class name, and we'll do text-5XL, which is a Tailwind class. And there we go. So Tailwind is now working. So let's close that up, and we'll just put this here, close that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about JSX. So every React component is going to return JSX. That's what this is right here, which is an HTML-like syntax. And I'm going to give you some examples of some things you can do here because it is dynamic. But one rule that you have to remember is that you can only return a single element. Okay, you can have as much stuff in that element as you want, like inside this div, but it can only return one. So if I try to, for instance, and you can put parentheses around this as well, whoops, parentheses, and put it on multiple lines. But if I were to add a paragraph here like that, you'll see I'm already getting an error in VS Code. It says JSX expressions must have one parent element. So if I save that, that's going to give us an error, same error over here, because I'm returning a div and a paragraph. Now, if I wanted this div and this paragraph, then I could simply wrap it in a single element. So I could say div, whoops, I hate when it does this. So I could say div and then end that here, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, so just remember that it has to be wrapped in a single element. Now, you might not want an actual div here, so what you can do is use what's called a fragment, and it's just an empty HTML tag, so just like this. So if I do that, you can see that still works, but now it doesn't have a surrounding div in the actual DOM. All right, so just remember that. Now, to give you kind of a little JSX crash course, let's say we want to put a dynamic variable here. So above the return, I can just write JavaScript. So for instance, I'll create a variable called name, and this isn't part of the project, it's just to give you some examples. So we'll do name, and then I can put that value anywhere within my JSX wrapped in curly braces. So I could say hello and then curly braces name, and you see I get hello John. And it doesn't have to be just a single variable, it could be an expression. So for example, I could say const x equals 10 and const y equals 20, and then I could say, let's go under that, we'll put another paragraph, and I'll say the sum of, and we'll put in x and y is, and then I could do an expression, I could say x plus y. And if I save that, I get the sum of 10 and 20 is 30. So basically you could put whatever you want in these curly braces. Now we can also use loops, and we can render something called a list. So let's add up here, let's say const names, and say, and we'll make this an array, and we'll just put some names in here. So Brad, Mary, Joe, and Sarah. So we get some names. And let's say I want to loop over these and output them in the browser. So we can create a list by, let's put this in a UL. And it doesn't have to be a UL, it could be anything. But I basically want a list item that has these names inside. So what we can do is open up some curly braces, take our names array, and then we use map, which is just the vanilla JavaScript high order array method. That takes in a function, but we're going to return some JSX for each one. So we'll say map and then name. And then in here, we can have whatever we'd like. I'm going to use a list item, and then we should have access to each name. So this creates what we call a list. If we check it out, now you'll see the names are all in a list. All right, now if I open up my console, we're going to see an error or a warning. And let's see, it says, let me just reload this. Okay, so it says each child in a list should have a unique key prop. So when you create a list, whatever this element is inside the map has to have a unique key prop. So we'll say key. Now, if we had an ID in this array. Like if it was objects with IDs, we could use that. But since we don't, what we can do is get the index by passing in a second argument here. And then for the key, we'll say that's going to equal. And if you're going to set this to something dynamic, then you use curly braces. So we'll say key equals index. And then if we reload that, that error goes away. So that's a list. Now we can also use conditionals within JSX. Now I can't use like an if statement in here in curly braces. Like I can't do this if something because it has to be basically a one-line expression. One thing you could do is you could have different returns. So let's say we have, let's say logged in, and set that to true, right? And then you might do something like if logged in. So I'm doing this above the return. So if logged in, then I could return, I don't know, we'll just say h1 and then hello member. So if I did that, then I see hello member, and none of this is going to render. But usually you're going to want to have the conditional somewhere in here. So in that case, what we could do is get rid of that. Let's go underneath the UL, and we could use a ternary. We can say if logged in, then let's show an H1, and we'll say hello member, else, then we'll say hello guest. So now if we take a look, it says hello member, and if I change logged in to false, it says hello guest. Now let's say you don't want to show hello guest, you just want to show hello member if they're logged in. So a couple things you could do. You could just put an empty string here, so now it doesn't show anything, or you could get rid of this, the colon here, and instead of using a ternary, you could just use a double ampersand. So basically this is going to return this if this is true. So right now it doesn't show anything, but if I change logged in to true, I should probably just make this smaller. So if I change logged into true, now it says hello member. Okay, so you can do all kinds of dynamic stuff in here, and I like to say that JSX is what HTML would be if it were a programming language and it had logic. Now for styling, there's a couple ways you can do this. So obviously you can have your CSS file and you can add class names. Okay, remember you don't want to use class, you want to use class name. But if you want to put inline style, you can actually do that within your JavaScript, within your JSX. So let's say for, I don't know, I guess this hello John right here. Let's add style. Now, we're going to pass in here double curly braces if you're adding inline style like this. And let's say we want to change the color. So we would say color colon and then a string of red. So it's not quite CSS, but you have the same properties. But one difference is you're not going to have for like font size, like let's put a comma here. You're not going to do font dash size like you would in CSS. You're going to do font size like that. And we'll change that to, let's say, 24 pixels. All right, so if I save that, now you'll see that that's styled differently. Now you can also put this stuff in a variable if you wanted to. So up here, let's say we want to do const, and let's call this, we'll just call it styles. Oops. Const styles, and we're going to set that to an object that has color red. So make sure you put it quotes because it's a string, and then font size, and for that we'll say, let's say 55 pixels. And then what you can do is instead of setting this, you could just simply set it to, in this case you would do single brackets or curly braces, and then just add in styles. Okay, so now it's using this. But we're not going to need to do anything like this because we're using Tailwind, so all we have to do is add classes. All right, so none of this has to do with the project. I just wanted to kind of give you a little intro, a little crash course to JSX. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of all of it and RAFCE once again and just clear all that up. We can close this up for now. So we want to start our project, and the way that I want to do this is just start off by copying the entire home page and putting it into our app, our main app component, and then break it up into smaller components. So let's do that. I'm going to go to Sublime Text because that's where I have my theme files. And we're going to go to index.html. Okay, so just open that up. Now we don't need the head stuff. That's already in the single page, the index.html. So let's grab everything that's in the body. So from this nav, and then we want to go down to the last section. We don't want the script there. So just grab this, and then we're going to put this as the return. So let's return some parentheses and then paste all that stuff in. Now, I'm sorry, we can't do that because remember it has to be inside of a parent. So what we can do is use a fragment and then paste everything in that fragment. Now remember, we don't want to use class. It will work. Well, one thing that's not going to work is the comments here. So you either have to comment it out with JSX syntax like this, or just get rid of the comments. I'm gonna get rid of. I guess I'll keep them. We'll just comment these out. So yeah, you definitely want to either delete or comment them out because you're going to get an error. So job listing 3, and I just put the comments in just to kind of break everything up. Was that all of them? Let's see. This one here, developers and employers, hero. And to comment it out, I'm just highlighting and doing command / or control / logo. We don't need that comment. All right, so now if I save that, you'll see it actually does work. But if I were to open up the console, it's going to tell me invalid DOM property class. Did you mean class name? So it's telling us to change these. So what we can do is just highlight the first one, and we can do a command or control / L. That will select all of them, and then we're going to change it to class name, save it, and then that should, if we reload, that will get rid of the warning. Okay, so now we have our entire page inside of the app component, which obviously isn't what we want. We want to break everything up into components. So let's start off, we'll just go from top to bottom. We'll start with the nav bar. So that's this entire nav tag and everything in it. So what we'll do is in the source folder, we're going to create a new folder called components. And in components, I'm going to create a file called navbar.jsx. Now, a component can have a JS or a JSX extension. And if you're using TypeScript, it can be TS or TSX. I prefer JSX. So we're just going to do that, and we'll do RAFCE again, and it's going to call it navbar because that's the name of the file. That's fine. So I'll save that. Now to bring that in and use it into our main component, we're going to go up to the top here and say import navbar from /components navbar, and then we can put that anywhere in here we want. Let's just go right above the actual nav tag and say navbar, just like an HTML tag, and there it is. So now we're importing and using that component. So let's take the entire nav tag and everything in it, and let's cut that. If we save it, you can see now it's gone, and I'm going to go into the nav bar, and I want to put that as the return. So we'll put some parentheses and then paste that in, save it, and now it's back. Okay, but it's in its own component. And if we were to use the React Dev tools, so if you open up your tools down here and you go to components, you can see we have our navbar component. And it will show you any props or state, which obviously right now we don't have any, but that's a separate component, a UI component. So now let's do some stuff here. You notice that the image isn't showing, the logo. So first thing, we need to bring it into our file structure, and I'm going to put it in the assets folder. Right now, there's just this React SVG, which we can get rid of that. And let's bring over, so if you go in your theme files and you go to images, you'll have the logo PNG. So I'm going to bring that, actually, let's create a folder called images in the assets folder, and then we'll bring the logo into that. All right, and then what we can do is bring that image in to our navbar. So we can say import let's say import logo from, and then we need to navigate. Let's see, we're in components, so we want to go up one level into assets, and then into images, and then logo.png. Okay, so we're going to bring that file in, and then we can go down to the image where we have the logo, which is right here, and let's replace the source. We're going to make it dynamic, so we need our curly braces, and then we can say logo, and there we go. So now the logo shows. So now the navbar is its own component. We'll come back to this later when we deal with the routes and links and that stuff. But now let's deal with the hero. So the hero is this section right here. So I'm going to just get rid of that comment, and then I'm going to cut this entire section. And then in components, let's create a file called hero.jsx, and we'll do RAFCE, and let's get rid of that, and then I'm going to paste in that section, save it, and then let's go to our app.js and do the same thing. We'll bring in hero, and then we can embed it like that. Okay, save, and we still get the same thing, but now the hero is in its own component. In fact, if we look at the dev tools again, if we go to components, you'll see we have navbar and we have hero. Now I want to go over props, because remember I said we can pass in props to a component, which are basically attributes. So let's say we want to be able to pass in two things. We want to pass in the title, which would be this, and the subtitle, which would be the smaller text. So we can pass it in, let's say title, and for now I'll just say test title, and then let's pass in subtitle, and I'll say this is the subtitle. Okay, so by doing that, nothing happens, right? So I mean, I'm just passing it in, I'm not using it in any way. So let's go into the hero, close that up for now, and then what happens is that props, it'll get passed in here. And you can call this anything. I'm going to call it props for now, but in a minute I'm going to show you how we can destructure it as well. So we want to put the title here instead of this hard-coded content. So what we would do is open up our curly braces, and we can say props.title. And then here for this one, we'll say props.subtitle. And if I save that, now whatever I'm passing in is going to get displayed as the title and subtitle. Now usually what you'll do is destructure this, so instead of just props, we could add some curly braces in here and then destructure the title and the subtitle like that, and then wherever we use this we don't have to do props dot, we can just do title, and then here we can just do subtitle, and that still works. Now you can also have default props, so all we have to do is up here, let's say for the default we want what we had, become a React dev, and then for the subtitle set that what was it, find the React job that fits your skill set. Okay, so if I save that, nothing happens because we're passing in the title and subtitle. Whatever we pass in is going to override the default props. So let's get rid of these, put it back to just hero, and now we have our default prop content showing. Now we can also have wrapper components. So in addition to just being able to do this with a self-closing tag, we could do something like, let's say we had a card component, and then you want to put, you know, whatever content inside of it. So let's do that for these two cards here. All right, now instead of bringing in the card component that we're going to create into this file and having all that content here, I want to keep this app file clean. So what we'll do is create a component to hold all of our cards, and we'll call that home cards. I know we didn't create this yet, but let's just embed it here and then bring it in. We'll say import home cards from, and it's going to be in components / home cards. Okay, and I know we haven't created it yet, that's why we have an error. But let's go ahead, we can get rid of that comment, and then let's copy this entire section, which ends right here. Okay, so we're gonna cut that, and let's go into components, right? And in components, we're gonna create a new file called homecards.jsx, RAFCE, and then let's get rid of this, and then we'll paste in that section, and then it should, yeah, there we go. So it's working again. So now this right here is its own component called home cards. But what I want to do is have each one of these be a card component that we can wrap the content in. So whatever content we wrap will have this background color, and I also want to pass in that background color as a prop, or pass in the class as a prop. So let's create another component called card.jsx, RAFCE. Okay, now this card component is going to take in, as a prop, it's going to take in, we're going to destructure, it's going to take in children. So children is what we use for whatever we wrap. So if we pass in like an H1 into the card component, we wrap the card, or wrap the H1 in a card, then this would be that H1. So that children, we just want to display that in the return. Now I do want to have the card styling, like the background and the shadow and all that. So let's make this a div that we return, but let's add some classes. So we'll say bg-gray-100. Let's do padding-6. Let's do rounded-LG. And let's do shadow-MD. All right, so we'll do that. And then in here is where we want to output the children, which is going to be whatever it is we wrap. So I'll save that. And now let's go into home cards and let's import cards. Oops. Cards from not cards, just card, singular. Okay, and then let's see where we have, so we have the grid class, and then these right here, right? So this BG gray, and then this BG indigo, these are these two. So I want to take everything that's in the BG gray div right here, right? This H2 and all this. Actually, you know what? Let's just take the whole thing. Or, wait a minute. No, we'll take everything in it. So the H2, the paragraph, and the link. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to cut, or not cut, but just delete this entire div. And then this is where I want to put the card, and I want to wrap this stuff. Okay, so this card now is basically just taking the place of the div, this BG gray div. And then let's do the same thing here. We'll take the H2, the paragraph, and the link. We'll cut that, and then we'll replace this div with another card, because you can have as many of the same component as you want. Then we'll paste that in. Now if I save, you'll notice that they both have a gray background, because that's what we're using in the card wrapper component. But what I want to be able to do is pass in a class like this so I can change the background color. So let's add another prop here. So in addition to that, it'll take in BG. And I want to set a default of the BG-gray-100. So that's what it will be if you don't pass in a BG. All right, now here we want to make this class name dynamic. So instead of hard coding this right here, we want it to be this variable. So how do we do that? Well, we have to, instead of just using quotes, it's going to be dynamic, so we need to use curly braces. So let's do that. And then let's get rid of, where's my cursor? Let's get rid of this right here, BG gray. And then we're going to put some backticks in here. So here and then here. Okay, so right now it has these hard-coded classes. But since we're using a template literal now, I can put a variable in here. So I'm just going to do that and then put the BG variable here, which by default will be this, but I can also pass in a new one. So if I save that now, you'll see that's still gray, but if I were to go to the second card here and then pass in BG and set that to, let's say, BG-indigo-100 and save, now I've changed that. So you can use props to not only change the content, but to also change the styling. So now we've come to the browse jobs, and now we want to start to work with data a little bit. Now we don't have a back end yet, so we're not going to be fetching these jobs just yet. What we'll do for now is just use a JSON file. So let's just open up so from the repository, in the source folder, there's a jobs.json file. So I want you to take that and bring that over to your source folder. Now, at the moment, this is an object that has a named jobs array inside of it. And the reason for that is because with JSON Server, which we're going to use later, that's how you need to format it. But for now, what I want you to do is just have the array. So we can get rid of this, the curly brace, and then the jobs. So it just starts with the bracket. And then down at the bottom, just get rid of that curly brace. Okay, so now we just have an array of jobs, and we can bring this into the file where we need it. Now we could bring it into, into the, we can close home cards, but we could bring the data into the app component, and then we could use it here. But like I said, I want to keep this app component clean. So why don't we put the listings into its own component? And then we'll have a single listing component, which will be, this block. So in components, let's create a new file, and we'll call this JobListings.jsx, and let's do RAFCE, and then let's grab from the app this entire section under Browse Jobs. We can get rid of that comment, and then this section, let's see, so this ends right here. Actually, let's see, do we want the we'll put the other section with the view all button in its own component. So let's just take this one section, cut it, and then in the job listings, get rid of that, paste this in, save it. Let's go back to app. Let's import job listings, and then let's add it here. So job listings. So you can see how we're cleaning this file up. Now it's going to look the same, right? Except now this is in its own component. Now I want this data, because right now if we look at this, the data is just hard-coded in the HTML. I want it to come from that JSON file. Like I said, ultimately it's going to come from JSON Server, which is a mock backend, but for now we'll just bring in the data directly. So we can do that by just saying import jobs from, and we want to go, let's see, up one level into, and then we want jobs.json. And just to make sure that we're getting that, we can just do a quick console log of jobs. And then if we check out console, you can see we have an array of jobs. All right, now we want to show those jobs here. So what we'll do, and this right here that you're seeing, the log in my browser, this is the Console Ninja extension, not the browser, my editor. This is from the Console Ninja extension. If you want to check that out, it's pretty cool. So let's see. We want to create a list. Remember I showed you a little while ago that if you have an array, which is what this is, jobs, you can loop through it and create a list using the map method. So let's figure out where we need to do this. So we have the grid here, so why don't we, inside of the grid, create a list that will have a div like this with the BG white rounded XL around all the jobs. Okay, just like we see here. Same thing, but we'll be using the actual data from the file. So I'm going to go right above where it says job listing 1, and let's say jobs.map. And then that's going to take in a function, and we're going to return some JSX from that. And that's going to take job. And then the JSX that I want is one of these divs, one of these boxes. So this div, which ends right here, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to cut that. Okay, we don't need that. We don't need these other listings now, so let's get rid of job listing 2 and job listing 3, which ends right here. Just make sure you get rid of the right divs. All right, so we're really cleaning this up as well. And then inside here, right, inside the function is where I want to paste in that single div. Now, if I save this, you'll see it's going to show it a bunch of times. It's showing the same data because that data is hard-coded. But it's showing, what, 10? Because that's what I have in the JSON file. So if we look here, we have, oh no, it's 6. Yeah, ID 1 through 6. So it's showing me 6 boxes, but it's all the same data. So all we have to do now is replace the hard-coded data with the data from each job, which we're getting right here. So for where it says full-time, let's change that to job dot and then type. So now those should be a little different. Full-time, this one says part-time. Okay, so for the title, this right here, the hard-coded title, let's get rid of that and let's say job.title. Now all the titles are different. Then we have the description. Let's get rid of that and say job.description. Okay, now those are different. Then we have the salary. So this right here. Let me see, how are those salaries formatted? Do they have, okay, so it's just the whatever K to whatever K. So the /year we'll leave there, but we'll replace this with job.salary. That should be a big K. Let me just fix this. All right. So let's see, what else do we have here? The location. And by the way, you see we do have the font awesome I tag here. We're not using the font awesome CDN, so it's not showing up, the little map marker. But I'm going to show you an extension that we can use called React Icons, where you can basically bring in your font awesome icons as a component. But we'll do that in a minute. Let's change this to job.location, and now you can see that the locations are different. And then finally, the link here is going to job.html, which obviously isn't correct. Ultimately, we want to be able to go to our website / and then jobs and then / whatever that job ID is. So let's change this to template literal. So we'll put in some backticks and we'll say /job/ and then we want the ID. So job.id, like that. Okay, so if I click it, it's going to go to job/2 in this case, which doesn't exist yet, but that's fine. Now, another thing I'd like to do is to make this an actual component, because right now in our job listings, yes, we have a list, but we're just outputting a bunch of HTML. Let's make this into a single component that we can then show for every job. So in components, let's create a new file called JobListing singular.jsx, RAFCE, and then that's going to take in as a prop, we'll destructure, and that's going to take in a job. And then what we can do is in the job listings within the map, this div, we're going to grab that, ends right here, we're going to cut it, and then here we want to paste that in, and basically it's going to get passed in that job prop, and then we'll use it in all these different areas. So now in job listings, we can simply import job listing, the singular, and then what we want to render for each job is going to be job listing, and it's going to get passed in a job prop. Okay, now remember, when you have a list, it also has to have a key, or you're going to get that error. So let's say key equals, and I'm going to set that to the job's ID, because that's going to be unique. Remember, it has to be a unique value. So if I save and reload, you can see that it's working. Okay, and if we look at the dev tools here, if we go to components, you can see our tree of components. Navbar Hero. In the home cards, we have 2 card components. In job listings, we have 6 job listing components. All right, and if we look at that, you'll see over here the props, which is all the job data. So you can see how this UI is nice and organized now, right? Everything is in UI components, and it's easy to manage. So if you were using just vanilla JavaScript, you would have this giant monolithic file where you're just selecting all these elements using whatever query selector, and then you'd have to just create all these different functions, and it gets very messy. But with React, or not just React, but any front-end framework, you have everything nice and neat for your UI. Okay, and it might seem like more work at first, but as your application scales, you'll learn to appreciate it. All right, so on the home page, I actually don't want to show all of these. I only want to show 3. But I also want to use this same job listings component when we get to the jobs page. So I'm trying to think of how I want to do it right now. I think right now, let's just go to job listings, and what we can do is, let's see, instead of just using jobs directly down here and looping through, let's do this. Let's say const recent jobs, and let's set that to the jobs array, and then we're going to use slice, and we'll say we want to get from 0 to 3. So we only want the first 3, and then we'll replace this with recent jobs. So now it's only going to loop over those 3. Save that, and there we go. All right, so this final thing, this button, if we look in our app.js, that's the last thing we have. So let's put that in its own component. So we'll cut that section, and then in components, let's create view all jobs.jsx, RAFCE, and we'll replace this with that section. Okay, and for the link here, let's change that to just /jobs, because when we start to use the router, that's what it'll be. And then in the app file, we can just bring that in. So import view, what do I call it? Yeah, view all jobs. Why isn't it coming up? // view all jobs, and then embed it here. Save it, and there we go. So now our app file is nice and neat. So what I'd like to do next is get into state a little bit and the useState hook. So remember, there's 2 types of state. You have component state, which relates to a single component, so one of these, right, Navbar Hero, and then you have app level or global state, which it relates to the entire app, and you can pass down to components. So what I want to look at now is component state, and I want to go into the job listing component, so this right here, and basically I want to be able to toggle this description from being short, where it ends around here, and then we can have a button that says show more that we click, and it'll show the rest. So basically we'll have a piece of state called show full description. Okay, and we can change that based on if we click that button. So let's come up here, and if you're going to add state, you need to use the useState hook. So we're going to import useState, and that's going to be from React. Okay, now the way this works, as I briefly showed you in the slides, we're going to come above the return, the output, and we're going to have some brackets here, and we want to set that to useState. Okay, now this is going to pertain to the show full description, and it's going to be a true or false value. And in here, you want to put whatever you want as the default. So I'm going to say false. I don't want it to show false. I don't want it to show by default. And then in here, we have 2 things. The name of the state itself, which I'm going to call show full description. And then the second is going to be the name of the function that we call to change that state. And it's going to be whatever this is with just set in front of it. So in this case, it would be set show full description in camel case. All right, so now let's get the description. So I'm going to go right above the return here, and I'm going to say let description, and I'm going to set that to the job.description. That's, the job that's being passed in for each one of these. And then if, let's say if, we'll say if not show full description, then let's basically just cut off some of it. So we'll take that description and we'll set it equal to whatever that description is, except I'm going to use the substring method to cut it a little bit. So we'll say 0 to 90. And then I want to add on to it an ellipses, the 3 dots. So I'm going to concatenate 3 dots onto it. And then what we can do is just replace job.description with that description variable. So now if I save that, you can see that they all got shorter and they have the little ellipses on the end. All right, so just to kind of reiterate, I haven't done anything with this state yet. All we've done is take the job description, and if the value of show full description is false, which it is by default, then it's going to cut off. Okay, it's going to cut off after 90 characters and add the ellipses. So now we want to have a little button that we can click, and this is going to get us into events as well, but we want to be able to click that and show the full description. So we can call this to change that. And so let's go down here and let's add that button. So I'm going to put it, I'm going to go right under the description, which is right here. Okay, and then we're going to add a button, and I'm going to add some classes to this. Let's do text-indigo, text-indigo 500, and let's do margin bottom 5. And then I'm also going to add in on hover, then we want text-indigo-600. And then in the button text, so this is going to depend on the state, okay? So this is where we show something different based on the state. Well, we've already done that with, cutting it off short. But I'm going to have a conditional in here, ternary, and I'm going to say if show full description is true, then I want this text to say less. Else, then I want it to say more. Okay, so if we save that, check it out. So it says more because set show full description is false. If I make it true by default, it's going to show all the text, and then this is going to say less. So you can see just the value of that state changes my component. So I'm going to put it back to false, and then let's make an event. So when we click that, we then set that state to just the opposite. If it's true, it'll be set to false. If it's false, it'll be set to true. So to do that, let's go to the button, and let's add, just put it right here. We're going to say on click. So when you want to add an event, it's going to be on click. You have on submit, and it's going to be camel case like this, not like vanilla JavaScript where it's all lowercase. So on click, what do we want to do? We want to basically just call that set show full description. Now you don't want to just do set full description here because that'll actually call it without even clicking on it. You want to run a function and then call set show full description. Now you could do this. You could say just set it to not whatever set full description is, okay? Because when you call one of these methods, whether it's set show full description or set, I don't know, set anything, whatever you have for your state, it can take in a couple different things. It can take in a straight value. So in this case, we're just setting it to the opposite, or it can take in a function. So if you pass a function in, you actually get here whatever the previous state is. And you can call this whatever, prev state. And what we want to do is then set it to the opposite of whatever the prev state is. So if it's true, set it to false. If it's false, set it to true. Because you can do it the way I just showed you, just passing in the not set full description, but you can run into some issues. So this is a better way of doing it, passing in the function, getting the previous state, and then setting it to whatever the opposite of that previous state. So we'll save that, and then let's come over here, let's click More, and now we see the whole thing. And of course, it's only the component that we click that we're talking about. Okay, these ones stay the same. If I click less, then it'll show less. All right, so this is, I know we don't have a lot of this type of stuff in this project, but that's the beauty of using a front-end framework, is the ability to add this kind of dynamic stuff. Okay, and you can picture using this for like a modal. You have the open and close state. If you have a menu, a hamburger menu, you have maybe menu, you could have menu open, like right here, you could have menu open and set menu open or something like that. So hopefully this gives you just kind of a good picture of what component state is and what you can do with it. Now we're close to our home page being done. So let's take care of the icon, because right now we have that in our job listing component. We have that I tag, which isn't showing anything because we don't have the Font Awesome CDN. But I don't want to use the CDN. I want to use a separate package for that. So this will kind of give you a little bit of experience in using additional packages. So I'm going to go to my terminal here, the one that's not running the server, and we're going to say npm install react-icons. And this will allow you to work with not only Font Awesome, but material icons and some of the other packages as well. So now that we have that installed, we can go to any component we want. So in job listing, let's import, and we can get from React icons, but since we're using Font Awesome, it's going to be /FA. And then there's a bunch of basically all the Font Awesome icons that are available here, and they all start with FA. And you can see here, there's just tons of icons. So the one that I want is called Map Marker, this one right here. And then what we can do is go down to where that I tag is. Now I still want, actually I'll just re-add the classes, but let's replace this I tag with FA Map Marker, which is a component. So basically the icon itself is a component. And I'm just going to add some classes to this. I want it to be inline, side by side with the location, text LG, and then a little margin bottom. So let's save that, and now you can see we have our little icon. Let's actually put some margin on the right as well. We'll say MR1, push that over a little bit. So now anywhere you want icons, you can bring it in from React Icons. So I think now we're to the point where we want to start to add additional pages, right? We want the jobs page, the add job page. So we can't do that with just React. So this is where, what I talked about earlier, a library versus a framework. Being a library, it doesn't have a way to add separate pages. So we're going to use React Router, which is basically the official router for React, but it is a separate package. So we need to install it. So let's go to the terminal again, and we're going to npm install, and the name of this package is React Router-DOM. Okay, make sure you add the -DOM. So we're going to install that. And the way that you set this up has changed a lot over time. In fact, there's been at least 2 times where I've created a React course, and then not too long later, they changed it up on how to use this. And it can be a little, the boilerplate can be a little overwhelming for beginners, so just bear with me. So we're going to put all the routing stuff in the main app file, so in the app JSX. And React Router it's actually a pretty big package. It's built, the Remix framework, which is a server-side rendering framework for React, it's built on top of React Router. So there's a lot that you can do. We're going to get into some stuff like data loaders that React Router offers, we're going to do that later on. So just be aware that there's a lot to it, and it can be a little overwhelming. But I'm going to show you exactly how to create routes, and so you can have multiple pages. So let's import a few things from React Router DOM. Again, make sure you use the -DOM at the end. So we're going to bring in the route component. We're going to bring in create browser router, create, it's called create routes from elements, and also the router provider. Okay, so we want to bring in those things. Now, the way that this will work is above the return in the main app component, we're going to create a variable called router. And we're going to set that to create browser router, which does just that. It'll create our router. And inside that, we're going to then use create routes from elements. And inside that is where we can use our route component. So we're going to put in route, and then you can put in a path here, but this is going to be for the home page. So we can actually just put in index, and then you can have an element represent that route. So for now, I'm just going to put in H1, because you can do anything just to show you. We'll just say my app. Okay, now this isn't going to do anything just yet because we haven't implemented the provider. Okay, the provider is what provides the router, and that's going to go down here. So we're actually going to change this up and not embed these components in here because we're going to have separate pages. So we can actually get rid of all this, and all we're going to return is going to be the router provider. So we're going to say router provider. And don't worry, we're still going to use those components. They're just going to be used in a different way. So let's say router provider, and then that'll take in the router that we just created above. So if I save that now, you can see we have my app, and that pertains to the home page route. Now, if I were to set this, let's say path equals /about, right? And then I go to /about, then that's going to show that element. Okay, so this does exactly what it says. It creates a route with a path, and it creates that from an element, which in this case is H1. Now, I want to show a page for my index. Let's put that back to index. So what I do is create a separate folder, because your pages are components. They're still React components, but I don't want to put them in the same folder as my regular UI components. So let's create a folder called pages. You might see it called screens sometimes, but we're going to call it pages. And then we're going to create a homepage.jsx file. And just like a regular React component, we'll do RAFCE. And on the home page, we want to bring in, actually, let's just save this for now and go back to app.jsx. And we no longer need to bring this stuff in here because we're not using it in our main app file. So we can get rid of that, but we do want to bring in our pages that we're going to use. So we'll bring in home page, make sure it's from pages and not components. And then here, we're going to render the home page. Okay, so now if I save that and we go, about doesn't exist, and I'll show you how we can create a custom 404 page as well. But if we go to the home page, then we see the text home page. Okay, now in the home page, this is where I want to bring in not the nav bar, because the nav bar I want to show on all pages, and we don't want to have to bring it into every single page. So we're going to create something called a layout. But let's say the hero component, for example, that I only want on the home page. So that I would import, let's say import hero from, and then let's see, we're going to go up one level into components, and then hero, and then let's we'll make this a fragment, and then we'll put our hero component, save that, and now the hero component shows. All right, now, like I said, for the nav bar and things like footers, that's stuff you want to show on every page. So this is where layouts come in. So we're going to create another folder in the source folder called layouts. And you can have multiple layouts. This particular project will only have one, but you can have multiple. But let's call this main layout.jsx. And again, this will be a React component. Now, before we do anything here, I just want to show you how to actually use the layout. So we can bring it into our main app.jsx. Let's say import main layout. And then what we need to do is just create a parent route to the rest of our routes. So let's go right here and say route and say path and set that to slash, and then the element is going to be set to the main layout. Okay, and then we're going to surround this. This parenthesis should be here, and then we're going to move that in here. Okay, so basically, if I save that, you'll see main layout. So now this is being applied. We don't see the home page anymore, and I'll show you how we can get that back in a second. But basically, any routes we put in here are then going to use this layout. So in the main layout, whatever route you're on, that content, that page is going to come through the outlet. So we're going to import outlet from React Router DOM. And then down here, let's make that just a fragment and then get rid of the text. And we want to output here. We want to say outlet. Okay, it's an actual component. Now, if I save that, we're seeing the hero again because we're on the home page. Right? We have no other routes, so if I were to go to /about, we're just going to see this 404. Okay, but let's reload that. That was just cached. But now we're seeing whatever the content of the page we're on. Now I want the nav bar to show on every page, so here we're going to bring in the nav bar. Let's say nav bar, that's going to be from / components navbar, and then let's put that above the outlet. So, and there we go. So now any page we're on is going to have the navbar. And of course, this is much better than doing, the vanilla way of having separate HTML pages where you have your separate header or your separate navbar code HTML on every page. So now that we've done that, let's see, the next thing, let's finish up the home page. Basically, we're just going to bring in the rest of our components that we had on in the main app file. So what else? We have the hero, we have the home cards. So I'm going to bring that in from components / home cards, and we'll put that right here. Okay, so now those are showing there. What else do we need? The job listings. Import job listings, plural, / components, job listings. Put that here. So instead of just putting the stuff in the main app component, we're putting it in the home page. Okay, then the last thing I think was the view all. So view, was it view all listings? View all jobs. All right, we'll put that here. And there we go. So we have this, which goes to /jobs, which doesn't exist yet. So let's do that next. Let's create the jobs page and the jobs route. So that's kind of the workflow from now on, is you create a new page and then you go to the app file and add the route. So let's create a file in pages called jobspage.jsx. I'll say RAFCE jobs page Just save that for now, and then let's add the route. We can close this other stuff up. Let's add the route into app JSX. So we need to bring in jobs page, and then we can just copy this down, except now we're going to change index to path, and we're going to set that to /jobs. And change this, the element, to jobs page. So now if we click on jobs, oh, this is still going to jobs HTML. And that's another thing I want to get to is links, because it works a little bit different. We don't use A tags, we use the link tags. So, but we can use the A tag, it will work. So just want to real quick go into the navbar, so components, navbar, and just change, let's see, this index HTML, change that to /, change this to /jobs, and change this to /add_job. All right, so now if I click jobs, it takes me to the jobs page, right? Also, this button down here goes to /jobs as well. So now let's get into the link tag, because we don't want to use A tags because it does a complete page refresh. Okay, so if I click, so if I click that, if you look up here in the tab, it shows the little loader real quick, right? So by using the link tag, it doesn't do an actual refresh. So in the navbar, let's import link. Actually, it's going to be in curly braces. So we want to import link from React Router DOM. And then we're going to change any A tag we have, such as this one, which goes around the logo. We're going to change it to link. And then the href, we're actually going to change it to 2. And then let's make this just /, which is the home page. All right, so that one, and then we have this one, change that to link, change this to 2. Same thing here, link. Make sure the ending tag changes as well. 2. And this one. All right, so now let's save that, and now I'm just going to reload this page. If I click there, you can see it goes to the home. And as I link and change pages, you see there's no refresh loader thing in the title. It's very fast, right? Because it's all in the client. And we want to change the link down here and the links for all these buttons to use the link tag. So let's go to, let's see what's next. We'll go to the, where is it, home cards. Yeah, this home cards. Change that. Actually, we need to bring it in. So up top of home cards, let's import link. Okay, and then this is going to be 2, and it's going to go to /jobs. And then this one, the add job, let's change that to link. Change that to 2, and change that to just /add_job. All right, so that should work. That route doesn't exist yet, but it will. Then we have the JobListing component. So let's go into that, JobListing, and let's bring in link. And then the A tag, which is right here, link to, okay, and then, is that it? I think that's it. Did we do this one? No, view all jobs. No, we want to do that as well. Okay, and then change this and this. All right, cool. Now, a couple things I want to do before we get to the jobs page. So one thing, I want to have a custom 404 because obviously this doesn't look very good. So what we'll do is go into the theme files, and I believe I have not found. Yeah, right here, not found. So all we want here is this section. So I'm going to grab that, and then let's create a new page. So in pages, we'll say not found page, JSX and RAFCE. And then I'm just going to paste in that section. Be sure to change all the instances of class to class name. And let's see, we're going to bring in link into this file as well. So let's import link and then change this a tag to link and change the href to 2 and change this to just slash. Why is this? All right, there we go. So now let's go to, actually, do we have an icon? Yeah, we do have an icon here. So I'm also going to bring in FA exclamation triangle from React Icons. And then let's replace this I tag right here. I'm just going to copy these classes. Yeah, and then we'll get rid of the I tag. And then let's put in FA exclamation triangle and then class name. Paste in, we're going to have text yellow. And then, actually, we don't need this FA class right here. We're going to get rid of that. Let's add text-6XL. Okay, now to make this show on pages that aren't found, we're going to go back to the main app component and let's import the not found page. And then what we can do is add a new route. Actually, we'll just copy that down. And we're going to set this to the not found page. And for the path, we're just going to put in an asterisk. So this should be like a catch-all. So home should work, jobs works. If I go to add job, we get 404 not found. Okay, so any page that's not found, you're going to get that, which looks a lot better. Now, the next thing I want to do is the active link. So right now, you can see if I go to jobs, the home is still active. So if we open up the Navbar right here, you'll see that the home link has a class of BG black. So basically, we want to show that BG black on whatever the active page is. Now we can do that by bringing in something called NavLink instead of link, which works. It works in a very similar way, except it adds a class to the active link. And we can change all the instances of link to NavLink, and it'll work the same way. So right here, 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 and then here. All right, so if we do that, then this should still work the same way. So what we're going to do is go to the home link, which is right here, and for the class name, let's just delete all this for now and put some curly braces in here. And what we can do is actually pass in an arrow like this, and then in these parentheses, we're going to pass in some curly braces and then put is active. And then we can test this. So this will be a true or false. If the link is active, if we're on that page, then this will be true. So then for the class name, we'll have a ternary and we'll say if is active. So if this link or this page is active, then show a class, else should have another class. And I'm going to just copy all these right here, and I'm going to put that in the first one, but I'm also going to add in here BG-black. Okay, and then for the else, this one, I'm just going to put it in without the BG black. So now if I save that, so you can see it has a black background, if I go to jobs, it doesn't. And we want to do that for all of these. So what we can do is just copy the first nav link. Actually, you know, a cleaner way to do this would be to put this in a function up here and then just add it. Yeah, why don't we do that? That makes more sense. So let's grab the function. So the parentheses and then the arrow. So basically to this, and let's cut it so that all you have now, oops, so that all you have now is just the curly braces. And then we'll go up here, and we want to go within the component, and let's say const, we'll call this link class, and then set that and then paste that in. Okay, so now what we can do is just simply add, for class name, we can just add link class, and we can do that for all of these. So we'll take that, do it for that one and for this one. And now if I go to jobs, now that's highlighted. Okay, add job, I mean, it still does the active link, but it doesn't exist. So you can see we make this, dynamic just by using NavLink. So let's do the jobs page, which is going to be really easy because I want to reuse the JobListings component. So let's do this. Let's go into jobs page, and let's bring in JobListings, and then let's see, I'm just going to make this a section and give it a class name of bg-blue-50 and px4 and py6. And then all I'm going to have in here is the JobListings component. So let's add that. Okay, so the issue here is that we're only seeing 3, and we want to show all of the listings. So let's do this. Let's pass in a prop into JobListings destructure, and it'll be called isHome, and we'll set it to false by default. And then let's change this variable. Let's because instead of recent jobs, we'll call it job listings. And then we're going to say if is home, then we want to set that to job slice just like we have it. Else, then we want to set it to just jobs, which is coming from the file, which is going to be all of the jobs. And then down here, instead of creating a list with recent jobs, we'll create it with job listings. So now if I save that, you'll see now it shows all 6. Now on the home page, it shows all 6. However, let's go to our home page and let's pass in that prop of isHome, and we'll set that to true. So now if I save, now we only see the 3 on the home page. So that takes care of that. We could even change the title based on if it's home or not. So let's say this, if is home, then let's show we'll do recent. Yeah, if it's home, we'll say recent jobs. Else, we'll say all jobs or browse jobs. Yeah, browse jobs. So browse jobs, recent jobs. Before we get into the single page, right, if we click on this, we go to job / and then the ID. Before we do that, let's switch from just bringing in a JSON file to actually fetching data from a back end. And to do this, we're going to use something called JSON Server, which is a fantastic library that basically lets you create a mock API. And you can send get, post, put, patch, delete requests. So you can create CRUD functionality. It can be any resource you want, because all you have to do is create a JSON file, which we already have, and you can put any type of resource you want in it. So we can use our existing JSON file. We just have to basically put back what we changed, which was make it an object that has a named jobs array. And then we can install JSON Server, and then we can simply run it like this. So we can create an npm script to run the server, which will run on a separate port than our front-end React app. All right, so let's do that. Let's, for now, just close all this stuff up. And then the JSON file, the jobs.json file, we're going to go ahead and just put opening curly brace here and then a closing one at the end. And then we want to just name this array. So we're going to put double quotes, call this jobs, and then set that to that array. Now that's going to break our application. So if we go back, you can see it's broken because it's just looking at the jobs file, and it's looking for an array, not an object with an array in that object. So that's fine. Don't worry about it being broken for now. We're going to fix it. But let's come down and let's install JSON server. So I'm going to install as a dev dependency JSON dash, right? I believe it's, I've done this so many times. I don't know why I don't remember. Yeah, it's JSON dash server. Okay, and then as far as the command to run JSON server, we're going to put that in our package.json file. So let's go here, and then let's add in, yeah, we're going to add in a server. We'll put this at the bottom here, just put a comma, and then we'll call this server. And what we want to run here is going to be JSON dash server, and we want to dash watch in the source folder the jobs.json file, and then dash port. Now I have something running on port 5000 on this machine. That's usually what I would use, so I'm going to use 8000 for the server, but feel free to use whatever port you want. I think it's 5000 by default. I'm not sure. But let's go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to run. So I already have my React dev server running in this terminal. So I'm going to go into this one and do npm run server. And as you can see, we have an endpoint of localhost 8000 jobs. And if I go to that in the browser, I'm now seeing my data. I can even go to jobs / and then the ID, and I get the single post. So it's just like if we built a REST API with Express or Django or anything else. We can also make post requests and add one, and it'll get added to the actual JSON file. We can edit, we can send a put request, we can send a delete request. So we essentially now have a back end. All right, so where I want to fetch this data is going to be from the JobListings component, because that's the only place in this application where we need the jobs, because we're using this component on both the, well, we can't see it now, but we're using it on the home page and on the jobs page. So let's change this up a little bit. We're no longer going to just bring in the jobs file. We're going to make a request, and we're going to do that inside of a useEffect hook. Because what the useEffect hook does is it allows our components to have side effects. And we want a side effect of fetching data when the component renders. And when we get those jobs from the API, we want to put them in state. So we also want to bring in useState. So let's import. We're going to import useState and useEffect from React. And as far as the, let's see, let's add the state. We no longer need this because we're not dealing with, we'll just get rid of that. And then let's create our state. So just like we did with the show details in the job listing component, we're going to add a piece of state here for our jobs. So remember, this takes two things, the name of the state and then the name of the function to update this state. So jobs and set jobs. And then the default value we want for jobs goes in here, which is going to be just an empty array, because it's going to be an empty array. We'll make the request when the component loads through the useEffect, and then we'll fill this state with the response from the API. Now, I'm also going to have a piece of state for the loading. So loading and then set loading. So that way we can show a spinner or something when it's actually fetching. And I'm going to set that to useState, and as a default, I'm going to pass in true. And then once we do the fetching and it's done, then we'll change it to false. So now let's add our useEffect. So we're going to say useEffect. Now the way this works is it takes in two things. It takes in a function, and then it takes in a dependency array. So if you put something in here, like let's say we had a variable called name or something like that. If we put name in here, then every time that name changes, this useEffect will run. Now, you want to have an empty array in here, even if you don't have anything, any variables you want to put in here, because if you don't, it's going to just be a never-ending loop. So you want to have this empty array in there in most cases. And then in this function here, I want to do our fetching, and I want to use async await. However, you can't do this. You can't say async, right? I can't do that, and then in here say await fetch. I can't do that. So what we need to do is create a separate async function inside of here. So let's say const fetch jobs, set that to async, and then we do our fetching, and then just make sure you call it. So right here we'll say fetch jobs. So in here I'm going to do const res, set that to await fetch, and we're going to pass in here, let's say HTTP, and then our back end, which is localhost, and I'll show you how we can add a proxy after, so we don't have to always put in this localhost 8000. But for now, we'll just add that, and let's do /jobs, right? Because that's what we saw in the browser. So if I were to do localhost 8000 jobs, that's our data. So that's what I'm getting here. And then let's do const data, set that to await res.json, and that should give us our data. And what we want to do is set jobs. We're setting this part of our state to the data that's returned. Now, I mean, we don't have to, but I'd like to put this in a try catch. So let's do that, and we'll take these 3 lines here and move them into the try. And then in the catch, I'm just going to do console log for now and say error fetching data, and we'll also pass in error. Now we want to set loading to false whether it's successful or not. So I could put set loading false here and in here, but since we have a try catch, we can just add a finally, because whatever we put in here will run either way, whether it fails or not. So that's where we want to put our set loading and set that to false. All right, and then yeah, so that should work, and it's going to put it into the jobs, and then down here let's change job listings back to jobs. So we'll save that, and then let's see, home, and now you can see we have 6 again, which is fine. We'll handle that. If we go to the jobs page, there we go. So these are coming from our API now. We're not just bringing in the file and using the data. We're fetching from the back end and putting it into the job state. Now let's use this loading value and come down here where we're creating the list with the map. I'm going to go right above that, and let's say if loading, then we'll show, for now we'll just put an H2 and we'll say loading, but ultimately I want to show a spinner. And then else, then let's show, we'll just have a fragment, and then I'm going to put this right here, this job list, into that fragment. What did I do here? Loading, I'm sorry, that should be a question mark. There we go. So now when I reload, you can see it flashes loading on the screen real quick. So that's when we're actually fetching the data. Now I want to use a spinner, so there's a package we can use called React Spinners that allows us to easily show a spinner. You could just throw an image in there, but I'm just going to use this. So I'm going to open a new terminal because both of these are running. Whoops, both of these are running the back end and the front end. So let's say npm install react-spinners, And let me just show you this real quick. Let's see, React spinners. Yeah, so you can show like all these things. I want the GitHub page. Okay, so the way that we use it is like this. We can, let's see. So we can use the clip loader. So apparently there's different loaders. We're going to just use the clip loader and then put it in like this. Yeah, let's create a new component. Let's call it spinner.jsx. RAFCE. So you can see literally everything is a component or can be a component. So in this component, let's import clip loader, and that's going to be from React spinners / clip loader. So we want to bring that in, and then spinner is going to take in the loading state as a prop. So let's destructure and add in loading, and then we're going to return the clip loader component. So here, let's say clip loader, and this is going to be a self-closing. Well, yeah, this is going to be a self-closing component. So let's say clip loader like that, and then it's going to take in some arguments here, some props. So for the color, let's do hexadecimal 4338CA, and let's do loading, which is going to be set to the loading prop that's passed in. And then we're going to add a CSS override because we want to just add a couple custom styles to center it. So let's set that to a variable called override. And what we'll do is come up here and create const override. Just like I showed you before, we can put styles in a variable. So all I want to do is add a display of block, put a comma here, and then a margin, let's say, we'll do 100 pixels top and bottom and auto left and right, so that'll put it in the middle. And then we're adding that to the CSS override prop. For the size, we'll set that to 150, and yeah, that should be good. So let's save that. Now in our job listings, we're going to bring that component in. So import our spinner. And we can come down here where we have this loading and just replace that with the spinner component and then pass in our loading state. So let's take a look at that. If I reload, okay, you can see the spinner real quick. It's not in the middle though. I'm not sure why. Because we have our override. Yeah, it should be in the middle. Oh, we have it in the grid. That's why. Okay, so we should probably put this div inside. Yeah, let's do that. We'll put that here, and then this ending div, put that here. So now, there we go. So now it's in the middle, and it should do the same thing on the home page because remember, it's the same component. Yep. All right. And now you can use that spinner wherever you fetch data and you want to show it. So let's take care of the home page having all 6. We don't want to do that. We only want to show 3. So what we could do, there's so many different ways we could handle this, but what I'm going to do is come up to the fetch jobs. So we have is home being passed in, so let's utilize that. So in the fetch jobs, let's do const ape, and let me just show you that you can add on to this with JSON server. This is another cool feature. You can do !_limit equals 3. And if I save that, now it's only showing 3. However, the jobs page is also showing 3. So what we're going to do is, first of all, let's say API URL, and we're going to set that and say if is home, right? So if is home is passed in, if that's true, then we want the URL to be this because we want 3. Else, then we want it to be this without the limit. Okay, and then we can simply replace this fetch with the API URL. So now we have 6 on the jobs page and we have 3 on the home page. Cool. So now I'm going to show you how to add a proxy so that you don't have to add this, because if we deploy this project, it's no longer going to be at localhost 8000. So we need to create a proxy. Now, if you've ever used Create React App, then you know that you do that within your package.json. With Vite, it's a little different. We do that within the config file. So let's go to Vite config, and in the server object under the port, we're going to add a proxy. And basically, we're going to say if it is prefixed with /API, then we want to use this. So we're going to set that to an object with a target, and that target is going to be HTTP localhost port 8000, or whatever port you use for JSON server. We're going to add change origin and set that to true, and then we're going to do a rewrite and set that to, that takes in a function with a path, and we're going to then just use replace and pass in an expression for /API. So it's going to be double / and then caret // /API, like that, and replace that with nothing. All right, so that way if we do /API /jobs, it's really going to hit localhost /jobs. So let's try that out. We'll come over here and then let's change this and this to just /API, like that. And let's reload, and it still works. All right, so now anytime you want to use the back end, you want to send a request, you simply do /API, and you're not going to have to change anything once you, well, you're going to have to change it here, but you won't have to change it, in every single file that you make a request when you deploy. So that's basically data fetching using useEffect. Now, there are other ways to fetch data, so you're probably going to run into those. There is something called React Suspense, which is included with React, and it allows you to do a render while fetching. What we're doing here is fetch on render, because when it renders, it has a side effect of fetching the data. But Suspense will allow you to render while fetching, and you basically provide a fallback UI, such as a spinner or a loading text, whatever. You pass that in as a prop or as an attribute. Now, I'm not going to do that in this video. I think it's kind of beyond the scope. I do have an older Suspense tutorial from when it first came out, or you can just check the documentation. What else? There's also something called React Query, which is a third-party library. There's one called SWR as well, and those make data fetching a little easier than this. So that's something you might want to check out as well. But this is like the base way of fetching from a client-side component. All right, and then also with React 19, you have the new use hook, which you can also look into as well. In fact, that React 19 video I give you some examples with that. So there's a lot of, that's the thing with React, is there's so many different ways to do the same exact thing. And some people will say that's wrong, do it this way. And another person will say that that's wrong. So you just need to kind of do what works for you. All right, so now we can start to work on the single page, right? This right here, job / and then the ID. And the way that we're going to get this data is going to be a little different. We're going to use a data loader from React Router, which is actually pretty cool. But we first have to create the actual page for the single job. So let's close all that up, and then under pages, let's create, let's say, job page, singular, and then JSX, RAFCE, save that, and then before we add anything here, let's create the route. So we're going to go to our app JSX, we're going to bring in the job page, and then we want to add the route so that if we go to job / and then any ID, that it loads this page. So I'm going to copy this down and let's do job page. Make sure you import it. And then for the path, we're going to do job. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do jobs. I like to kind of keep these the same. Even though it's a single job, I think I'm going to keep jobs, but you could do what you want. And then we're going to do :ID. Now the colon represents, it basically signifies that this is dynamic. So it's not a literal ID, the letters ID that you're passing in. It's a symbol or a variable for whatever the ID is. All right, so let's save that. And then if we go back here and reload, or let's just, let's see, why isn't that working? So /job, oh, because I have job ID. So let's change the link in the job listing component. So job listing, I'm going to say jobs/ID. So now click it, and there we go. So now we're seeing the job page, and it doesn't matter what the ID is here. We're still loading that page. Now let's close up job listing, close up app, and again, there's so many ways to fetch data, and we could do the same exact thing we did in the job listings component. We can use a useEffect so that when this page loads, we get the job. Now, what I want to do is use a data loader from React Router. So this is going to work a little bit different than we did with the job listings. Now, a data loader, we basically create a function in this file, and then we can export it from this file and then use that function in other areas. So we can use this in basically as our global state for whatever this job is and pass it into other components. So the way that we do this is, let's see, where should we do this? Let's go right under the function here, the job page function, and we're going to create a function. I'm going to use an arrow, but if you want to use a regular function, you can. We're going to call this job loader, right? And then we're going to set this to async, and it's going to take in, well, actually, yeah, we got to pass in params because that's how we're going to get the ID. You know what? I'm going to show you how to do it with useEffect first because I don't feel confident enough that I showed you enough fetching with useEffect. So let's do that first, and then we'll change it up, and I'll show you how to use a data loader. So I'm going to import useState and useEffect from React, and let's see, we'll add the job to the state. So let's say const and just job and then set job. All right, and then we'll set that to useState. And then as far as the default, we'll just do null for the default. And then we'll have our useEffect. And the useEffect, again, takes in a function and dependency array. And I'm going to create a function just like we did in when we got all the jobs. We're going to have this is going to be called fetch job. And this is going to be a sync. And then we want to call it down here. I like to do this first because I always forget to call it. And then in the fetch job, basically we can probably just copy what we did in the job listings. Like this stuff here. We'll just grab the try catch. I'm probably going to change this up after, but let's do HTTP. Oh, we don't need HTTP anymore. We just do /API/job. Now we need the ID. So how do we get that? We can get that using the useParams hook from React Router DOM. So let's say import useParams, and that's going to be from React Router DOM. And then the way that we do this is we can go right here at the top, and we're going to destructure from useParams, and we want to destructure and get the ID. Okay, so that should give me the ID, and then in here, let's replace these quotes with backticks, and we'll say API/job/ and then the ID. Okay, then we get the data, and then instead of set jobs, we're going to do set job data. And yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, I think that's good. Oh, the loading state, we didn't do that. So we want to do loading, set loading. That's going to be true by default. Okay, and let's see what else. Let's bring in the spinner component. And then for the return, let's do return if loading, then show the spinner, else, else then we'll just put in H1 for now and just say job. And I want to make sure we get the job data, so why don't we put in this H1 job.title. Cannot read property, null. So we're setting the job to the data. Let's see. Let's do a console log of data. Responded with a status of 404. Oh, I think it's jobs. Yeah. There we go. So we're seeing the title, and we're seeing it in the whole thing in the console. So just to kind of reiterate what's going on here, the component loads, it has a side effect where we fetch the data from API jobs and whatever the ID is in the URL, and we're getting that because of the useParams hook from React Router DOM. And then once we get the data, we're setting it to the state. Down here, we're saying if it's loading, show the spinner. So if I reload, you can see the spinner real quick. And then once it's loaded, it shows an H1 with the title, which is this right here. Okay, so that's how we can get the data just using useEffect. Now I'm going to show you another way to do this using React Router's data loaders. And we can do this without having to do the useEffect. And we can also export the data as well from this component so we can use it elsewhere. And we will use it elsewhere. We're going to use it in the edit page, because in the edit page we do the same thing. We have to fetch the job. So I'm going to get rid of this. If you want to just kind of comment it out so you still have it, you can do that, but I'm going to get rid of that. I'm also going to get rid of the two states, and I'm even going to get rid of the useState and useEffect. I'm still going to get the params because I do need the ID still. And yeah, we'll keep that as well. But what we can do is go under the function above the export, and let's say const job loader. And remember, this is a feature of React Router, not React itself. So let's set that, and we're going to pass in an object with params. Okay, and then in the job loader, this is where we're going to make our request. So let's say res equals await, await fetch, and it's going to be, let's see, let's use backticks here, and then slash API jobs, and the ID we should be able to get from that params.id. Then we'll say const data, set that to await, and then res.json, and then we're simply going to return the data from this function. Okay, so a loader is just going to return the data. Now we want to export it, but we also want to still export job page as default. So what we can do is say export, we can do this, wrap this in curly braces and say job page as default, and then have a comma and also export the job loader. Now what we can do is go into the app JSX where we're embedding the job page, and where we imported job page, that's default, so no curly braces around that. But then we can also go like this, job loader, because we exported that as well. So now we have access to this job loader, and with React Router we can go down to where we have the route for job page. So we're going to put this in the route, not the job page component itself, but in the route. So I'll go after element and then say loader and set that to job loader, like that. All right, so now we're passing in a loader. Now the way that we access this loader from in here, from in our component, so we're exporting it from from this function, and then we're passing it in to the route. So the way that we can access that is with the use loader data hook. So use loader data, and that's going to be from React Router DOM. And then all we have to do is simply say const job, set that to use loader data, like that. And then I'm going to save. Let's come back over here. Let's see. Loading is not defined, so we're not using loading anymore, so I'm just going to return the H1. And there we go. So you can see we're actually getting the data, but this time it's actually coming in through that loader. We don't need the spinner either. So we cleared up this file quite a bit. And in addition to that, this job loader we can pass into other components as well and use that to get a job by its ID. Now let's finish up this page. So I'm going to go to my theme, and it's going to be the job.html file. And there's quite a bit here. So let's see, we have this section with the go back button, and then this section. So I'm going to grab both of these sections. Okay, we're going to grab both of those, and then we want to return here. We're going to return a fragment with both of those sections. And then let's not forget to change all the classes to class name. And then any comments like sidebar right here, comment that out. We can get rid of that. Get rid of that. And is that it? I think so. So let's save. All right, so now we just have hard-coded data, right? So we need to replace this with dynamic data. Also, we have an icon right here for the FA arrow left. So let's bring that in from, let's see, FA arrow left. And we're going to replace this with FA arrow left. And let's add a class name. We're going to do margin right 2. And now we have our arrow. And then as far as the link, we need to bring in link and change that to link. Change this to 2 and change this to just /jobs. So now the back button should work. Good. But notice they're all senior React developer no matter what, because they're hard-coded. But we have access to this job object, so we can simply replace everything. So like right here, full time, let's change that to job.type. All right, let's change that. This is going to be the job.title. Okay, now we get front-end engineer. We do have another icon here, which I believe we're going to use the map marker for that. Yeah, let's bring in FA map marker, and let's replace this FA map And let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so we want to give that, let's say, class name text dash orange dash 700 and margin right 2. Or margin right 1 maybe. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay, so underneath that, this Boston, Mass, we're going to change that to job.location. We have the description, job.description, salary, so this right here, we're going to replace that, job.salary. Now in the sidebar, we have the company info, and if we look at the data, we have a company object with name, description, contact email, and contact phone. So for the name, it's going to be job.company dot type, was it name? Yeah, so we get the name, then we get the company description, so that's going to be job.company.description. And then we get the contact email, so this right here is going to be job.company.contact email. And then we have the phone, so that's going to be job company contact phone. All right, so all that stuff is now coming from our back end. And then what do we have down here? We have the edit and delete. So the edit is a link. So let's change that to link. Let's change this to 2. And then as far as the link itself, let's make this dynamic with some backticks because we want this to go to /jobs/edit/ and then the job.id. And we'll handle that later. And the button, we'll just leave that as is for now. And there we go. So now whatever we click on, we can see the actual data. And let's make sure we're not getting any errors. Cool. So we now have our single pages. So now we're going to do the add job page, which right now doesn't exist. So let's create the page. So under pages, we'll say add job page. And let's add the route. So we want to import add job page. And then we're going to put this, I'll just copy this down, change this to add job page. And then the path is going to be add dash job. Okay, so now if you click on add job, you should see that. Also, this button here should also go to the add job page. All right, now we need to get the form. So let's go to the theme file. So this is addjob.html, and what we're going to do is get the whole section right here that has the form in it. So just grab this entire thing, and let's paste this in the return. So right here, we're going to have parentheses and then paste that in. Now we have to change all the instances of class. So Command-Shift-L, class name. Also, these have labels with the for attribute, which isn't allowed in JSX. We need to change it to HTML4. So I'm going to select the for equal, not just for, because I'm sure there's other things in here that have FOR. So select the equal sign as well. Select all of them and then change it to HTML uppercase R4. I mean uppercase F4. Save it, and now we have our form. Now, there's many ways to work with forms. There's other libraries like Formic. There's a lot of things you can do. You can use refs, but I'd say the common way, the core way of doing it is adding a piece of state for every field in your form. Okay, because these change, and then when you change it, when you type in it or you select, you change the state of that item. Okay, so what we're going to do is bring in add state, use state, add state. So let's import use state, and then we want to create a state item for each field. Now, there's different ways you can do this. You could have just a single object in your state and have all the fields in that object, or you can do a separate piece of state for every field, which is what I'm going to do just to keep it simple. So let's say const, we know we have a title, so title and then set title to change it, and set that to useState. And then in here is going to be the defaults, and most of these, actually all of these, are just going to be empty strings as default. Now I'm going to just copy this down. Actually, you know what? I'm going to paste the rest of these in, and then you can just copy them. Okay, so we have title, type, location, description, salary, company name, company description, contact email, and contact phone. All right, so those are all the state. And what we need to do now is add on each input. So let's see, the first one is the select, it's the type. So this select right here. And what we want to do is add a value and set that value to that piece of state, which in our case is called type. Okay, so if I save that and I come over here and I try to change it, notice it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. And if I look at the console, it's going to tell me I provided a value prop to a form field without an onChange handler. So basically, when you add a piece of state to, or you connect a piece of state to an input, you have to add an onChange, because when you change it, that state has to update and has to call this set type or set whatever the field is. So what we can do is under the value, we're going to say onChange. So just like any other event, on click or whatever, you just add it, camel case. And what we'll do is set a function, and this can take in an event param. Okay, now this parameter has on it a target.value, and that's going to be whatever is selected or typed in the field. So what we can do is then say, well, so we want to set the type, and we want to set it to e.target.value, because this is going to be whatever I select, and I'm going to set the state to that. So now if I save that, reload, and I click on part-time, now it works. And if we look in our components in the dev tools, now we have a bunch of stuff here. If we look at the add job page and we look in the state where it says part-time, if I change that to full-time, you'll see that the state updates. Okay, so now this input is part of the component state. So we need to do that for all the inputs. So let's actually copy the value and the onChange here and go to the next one, which is the title. I know this says name, but the field is title. So we're going to paste that in and then change that and that to title. Okay, and make sure that this is uppercase. If you selected both and changed them at the same time, then this is probably going to be lowercase, so you can manually change it to uppercase, or what I would recommend is using this multiple case preserve extension, and it'll basically just preserve your case if you're changing a bunch of stuff at once. So it comes in handy. It's a small extension, pretty unknown, but it's very useful. All right, so now description, that's the placeholder, that's the text area. And we're going to go ahead and just change that and that to description. Okay, so it's just setting that description state to whatever I type in, onChange every time I type in anything. Salary, let's see, this is another select, so let's paste that in and change that and that to salary. Okay, then we have location. So we're going to do this. Location, name, change that, company name, and set company name. Then we have the description. So this is company description. Whoops, this should be set company description. Then we have the contact email. Again, make sure you're changing this too, not just the value. And then for the phone, contact phone. Oops. Yeah, I would just double check all those. All right, so I think that should do it as far as adding the state for each of these. You should be able to, change these up, type in here, and it's changing the state of, those fields. Now we want to submit the form, so let's come up to the form tag. Now React 19 is going to have something called actions, where you can actually put an action and set that to a function. That's a brand new way of doing it in React 19 that isn't even released yet. So we're going to stick to just adding an onSubmit and set that to, now up to this point when we have events, we've been putting the function directly in here, but we can set it to a function that we create. So let's say we want it to be called, we'll call it onSubmit. No, let's call it submit form. And then we can create that function up here. I'm going to go above the return, const submit form. And I like arrow functions. You don't have to do this. You can use a regular function if you want. And that's going to take in an event parameter because we want to stop the default behavior. So we can do e dot, and this is just like with vanilla JavaScript. So prevent default. And then let's do a console log, and we should have access to all the state, right? Because they're all connected to those fields. So for instance, if I put in, let's say description, if I console log description, right? Come over here, let's open up the console and just make sure, okay. And then I'm just going to put something in the description and I'm going to submit the form. All right, so we do have some required fields. Let's see, is that it? Oh, this is required too. Okay, so now I submitted, and what I had in the description right here is now logging. So we know that the form's hooked up to this event, this submit handler, and we know that we can access at least the description field. So let's construct an object from the form fields that we want to submit to our API. So I'm going to say const new job, set that to an object, and we want to set the title. And since I'm setting title to title like this, we don't need the second one. We can just simply do that. Type, location, description. We have the salary. Now this is where, because we need this to match up with the way our API is structured. So now we're going to have our company object. And let's set name to the company name. And let's set the description to the company description. Whoops. Company description. And then we have, what else? Contact email. And that's it's called the same thing, so we can keep it like that. And then contact phone. All right, and then let's just console log this new job just to make sure. New job. And let's see. I'm just going to make sure you fill out every field so we can just make sure we submit. If we look in the console, looks like salary and type, which are the two select lists, looks like those aren't showing up. Okay, now it did. Salary, type. All right, so that did. I just want to make sure if I leave the defaults for salary, those should show the default values, which they're not. They're blank. All right, so you know what we can do is set the defaults for those since they're select lists, for the type, for instance, let's say under, what's the default? If we look at the options here, oh, for not salary, for the type, this is the default full-time. So for the type, that's going to be full-time. And then for salary, let's make this, it has to be the same exact as this. So we'll set that as the default for the salary. So let's see if I reload that and then we submit this again. I know this is kind of a pain to have to fill these in again. All right, so now, yeah, under 50K for the salary and full-time for the type. So our submission is working. Now we need to make our request, our post request to the back end. So for that, we could do that here, right? But I like to have requests like that all in the same place. So I will actually want it in the main app file, the edit, the delete, and the add or the submit. So what we can do is pass in, let's see, so right here as a prop, we can pass in a function. So we'll say, what do we want to call this? Add job submit. And then we can call that function down here. Let's replace the console log with add job submit. And once we submit it, I actually want to redirect to the jobs page. So to redirect, we can use useNavigate, the useNavigate hook from React Router DOM. So let's say import useNavigate, and that's going to be from React Router DOM. Now to use this, we need to first initialize it. So I'm going to go right here below the state and just say const navigate, set that to useNavigate. And then after we submit, I'm just going to simply return navigate and then where we want this to redirect, which is going to be /jobs. Okay, so this add job submit, this is being passed in now as a prop. So in our app, let's go to the component, which is the add job page, and let's say add job submit. And what we'll do is set this to a function called add job, and then we can create that here. So we'll say const add job, okay, and that's going to take in the new job. And just to make sure this is working, we'll do a console log of new job. All right. Actually, you know what? This should be in the app component. And I'm going to move the router into that as well. Yeah, let's do that. Let's move this stuff into the app component. I meant to put that in here to begin with. Okay, so that should still work. Now let's fill out this form again. Pain in the ass form. All right, so if I submit it, it redirected to the jobs page and it showed it in the console. So that means that it's calling this, right? You can even see it in my editor using Console Ninja, and then it redirected us because of this. So if you want to call a function in a parent component, you can do that. You just pass it down like this, right? So I passed in this add job, I passed that in as a value to add job submit. And then in this page, I caught add job submit and I called it right here. So I mean that kind of confused me when I was learning this, because it's just a little weird to know, am I passing this up? Am I passing it down? Like, it's a little confusing, at least it was to me. But just know you can pass in a function and you can call that function, and whatever you put here, so add job for instance, is going to get fired off whenever you fire this off in this component or this page. So now that we've done that, we should be able to make the request and actually add the job. So let's get rid of the console log, and let's say const res, set that to await fetch, which means we have to make this asynchronous. So async. And then we're going to fetch, let's say /API/jobs, but this is going to be a post request, so we need to pass in a second object and set the method to post. Okay, and then we also want to set the headers, and that's going to be an object, and we want to specify the content type, so content-type, which is going to be application/JSON. And then the data itself is going to go under the headers in the body. We're going to wrap it in JSON.stringify and pass in that new job. And then after that, we'll just return. So let's save that, and then let's come over here, go to add job. We'll just say test job 1. This is a test. Company name. This is an awesome company. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click add job, and it redirected us to the job page, and we have our new job. All right, so it made the post requests, and we just returned from this function, but we redirected in this one to jobs. And if I click read more, it takes me to the single page for that new job. So now let's do the delete. So I want to be able to click this delete button. And again, I want the actual request function to be in the main app component. So let's put a comment here. We'll say add new job. And then underneath that add, let's say delete job. Call this delete job. And it's going to be async. It's going to take in an ID because we need to know which one to delete. And then for now, we'll do a console log of delete and the ID. And then that's going to get passed into the single job page right here as a prop. So we'll say delete job, set that to delete job. Yeah, so we'll do that. And then we can pass that in as a prop to the job page. So right here, we'll say delete job. And then on the button, at the bottom here, we have this button. Let's say on click, and we're going to set that to a function, and then we'll call another function called on delete click, and then pass in the job.id. Okay, and then this on delete click, we're going to put that up here. Const on delete click, and let's pass in, we get the job ID getting passed in here, and I want a confirmation since it's a delete, so I'll say const confirm, set that to window.confirm, and we'll say are you sure you want to delete this listing? Okay, and then let's say if not confirm, then we want to just return. If we do confirm, then we're going to call that delete job that we passed in, and we want to pass in the job ID. Okay, and then I'm going to redirect. So in order to do that, we have to bring in use navigate. So let's see, that's going to come in from React Router DOM. and then we have to initialize it, so const like that, and then we can just navigate to /jobs. All right, now let's just click on it, and what should happen is it should redirect us, and it should show the ID in the console. So click it, say OK, redirects, and shows the ID. Is that the ID? Let's see, jobs.json. So it should have added my test to the file. Yeah, right here. So that is the ID for the test job. Good. So now we want to make the actual request to the API. So that's going to go right here. So we'll have all of our requests in, nice and neat in this file. Now, this is for a small application. You could use the context API, which, you would have it in a context file. You could use Redux or some other state manager, but this is such a small application, we don't need that. So I'm going to just grab this from the add job and then put that here. Okay, we're going to fetch API jobs. Now we have the ID coming in, so let's make these backticks and say / and then the ID. Method is going to be delete. Okay, headers, get rid of that, and get rid of the body, and yeah, I mean that should do it. Let's try that. So to test job 1, delete. Are you sure? Okay, and now it's gone. If I reload, it's gone, and it should be gone from that JSON file as well. And again, you would be working with an actual backend. So that leaves us with the edit. Now, before we get to that, even though it redirected us, I wanted to show some proof that we deleted the job. So we're going to use a package called react Toastify, which will show a little toast notification wherever we want to put it. So let's install that. I know this is not, this is a separate package, but it's something that you'll probably commonly use. I use it all the time. React icons, React Toastify, React Spinner. These are things that I use in just about every project. So let's say react-toastify. Now we have to set this up. We need to have, let's see, in our layout is where we want to put this, so we have basically like a wrapper for the layout to output. So if we go to our main layout, we're going to import from here. We're going to import the toast container. So toast container, that's going to be from React Toastify. And then there's also a CSS file that we need to import. So that's going to be React Toastify and then /dist /react-toastify.css, like that. And then the container, you can pretty much put that anywhere. It's positioned absolute, so it should be up in the corner, but you can change the positioning with attributes or props if you want. But let's save that. Now, what we can do is when we delete, let's see, where should we put this? We're going to put this in, we could do it here, but I think I'm going to put it in the job page right before we redirect. So wherever you want to use a toast, you simply import toast from React Toastify, and then where we want to call it, let's go right after we delete and say toast.success. So you can do success or error, and let's say job deleted successfully. All right, so now let's try it again. I'm not going to delete any of these. I'm just going to create another dummy job. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's do a toast where we add it as well. So we'll import this into the add page. And then right before we redirect here, let's say toast.success, and we'll say job added successfully. Okay, so now let's just put whatever, just some junk in here. Add, there we go, job added successfully. And then if I delete it, job deleted successfully. And you can do toast.error if you wanted to show an error for some reason. All right, cool. So now we're going to do the edit. Okay, we have this edit job button. Let's create the edit job page. You can close this stuff up. Leave the app JSX open. And in pages, let's say edit job page. And then let's add the route. So in our app.js, let's import edit job page. And let's see, we're going to add this. So with the edit page, I'm actually going to use the job loader because in order to edit, we have to fetch the data, right? And we already have this job loader, so we might as well use that. So I'm actually going to copy this route for the job page, copy that down. I'm going to change the route. Let's do this one here. We're going to change it to edit-job and then slash and then the ID. And change this to edit job page. And we can get rid of this delete job. And just like we did with the job page, we're going to pass in the job loader. That'll give us access to the data. So let's save that. Now, if we click on the edit button, it should take us, wait a minute, that goes to job/edit. I'm actually going to change that. So in the job page, where we have the edit button, I'm going to change that to edit-job and then the ID. So edit, there we go. So now we're seeing the page. And since we passed that loader, and we can do the same thing that we did in the job page, we can bring in use loader data and then simply do this. And we should have access to the job for that page. So I'm going to grab that. And let's see, do we need this stuff here? Yeah, we'll just leave it for now. And then let's do this. So use loader data. And go like that. And then I'm just going to do, actually what I'll do is output here. And we should be able to get the job.title. So let's go back, and there we go. So we're getting the data for whatever job we're trying to edit. So React.js developer, click on edit job, React.js developer. So I think the data loader feature in React routers is really cool for stuff like this. Now we need the form, and we need to fill the form with existing data. So why don't we copy the entire add form? So add job page. Let's grab the entire section. Okay, so we're going to grab that and then go to the edit job page, and then let's return in parentheses, paste that in. And we're going to do the same thing where we have the state, so we can also copy this, all this stuff right here, and put that in, and put that right here. Actually, let's put the state above that. All right, and then what we can do is put the default, actually no, we want this above the state because I want to add the defaults from this job. So for instance, the title, let's say job.title. So for the type, let's say job.type, and this will add the fields in the form, add the data in the form. So job.location, This is going to be job.description, job.salary, and this will be company dot, is it company? Yeah, I think it's name, company name, and then job dot company dot description, company dot email. Let me just double check. I think it's contact. Yeah, contact email and contact phone. Job dot company dot contact phone. All right, so if I save that, we get useState is not defined, so we do have to bring in useState. Submit form is not defined, so the form has this on it, this submit form function, so we just need to create that. Say submit form. You don't have to put anything in it just yet, just create the function. And now you can see the form is actually populated with the right data, which is exactly what we want. Now, the submit form, we might as well copy it from the add because we're going to do the same thing and construct a new job. So let's just grab, we'll just grab this whole thing. And then in the edit submit form, paste that in. Now, one difference here is going to be we're going to pass along the ID because we're going to need it when we make the request. So I'm just going to pass in ID right here. And then instead of new job, let's call this updated job. And then instead of add job submit, let's say update job submit, and pass in updated job. And then we'll do a toast. We'll say job updated successfully, but we do have to bring in toast because I don't think, we didn't bring it in. So import toast. Okay. Now actually, let's also redirect to the job page. So let's put in some backticks here, and we'll say job slash, and then the, we just put the ID. Now this right here, update job submit, we're going to pass in as a prop. So update job submit. Also, if we're going to navigate, we're using navigate here. That means we have to initialize use navigate. And yeah, I don't think we don't need useParams. So that should be good. All right, now this update job submit, let's go back to our app.js because we need to basically catch that and then fire off a function in here. So where we have our edit job page, let's do update job submit, and we'll set that to a function called update job. And then up here, we'll create that. So const update job. All right, now as far as what we're going to do here, I'm just going to copy this from the add. And you could put these requests in a separate file if you want in some kind of service. But I'm trying to keep things simple. Let's see. So this is going to be fetch, and then the job will come in here. And then we'll change these to backticks because it's going to be jobs slash, and then job.id. So that's why I added the ID in the other file. It's going to be a put request. And let's see, the body here is going to be job. Actually, we could call this, no, that's fine. Yeah, and then that should do it. Let's save that and let's try it out. So we have our React.js developer job. Let's change it to just React.js dev. And we'll keep all the rest of the stuff. Add job. It's not submitting. Reference ID is not defined. Oh, ID is not defined. So I guess we do need the useParams because we got to get the ID. So from React Router DOM, let's say useParams, and we can just go right here, const ID useParams. Okay, we'll try that. Change that to React Dev. We'll change the text to this too, but let's submit job updated successfully, and it changed to React.js Dev, and it redirects us to the page. Let's just change the button text. So right here, change that to update job. Is there a heading too? Yeah, we'll change the heading because it says add job. So right here, update. All right, so we have a full CRUD application. The only thing we're missing is authentication, but like I said, that's beyond this tutorial. This went way longer than I initially planned and wanted. But we did a lot. You know, we learned about components, props, state, the React router, data loaders, useEffect, useState, useParams, all those hooks with React router DOM. So I think we touched on a lot, and I think that you should have enough to create some simple projects on your own. Now, as far as deploying, what you would do is just run npm run build, and that will give you a production version of your site. You see how the React Dev Tools right here, it's orange, and it says this page is using the development build of React because we're running the development server. So what I can do is stop the development server, and I can do npm run build. What that'll do is create a new folder called dist, and that dist is your production build. Okay, so I can run that with Vite. There's in the package.json, there's a preview, right? This preview, and that should run the development build. So let's say npm run preview, and that's running on 4173. So now notice this extension says this page is using the production build of React. Okay, so now this is what you would deploy, this dist folder. And you could basically deploy it anywhere. Now, if you do try to deploy this, it's not going to show the jobs because we're using a local server. We're using JSON server. If you actually want this to be a real project, then you're going to have to create an API with Express or something else. But you're not going to really have to change anything as far as this stuff, because this is going to be the same whether we're dealing with JSON server or you're dealing with a REST API with Express, Django, Laravel, just whatever. So yeah, I mean, this is a front end course, but I did want to give you some examples of using back-end data because that's what you do in the real world. All right, guys, so hopefully you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from it. Like I said, there's so many different ways in React to do everything. So if you saw some things the way that I did and you didn't like it, that's fine. You know, everybody has their own way of doing things. And also keep in mind, I try to do things as in the simplest way possible so that I can explain it and people can learn it and understand. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.